1 in 4 young black men backing Trump. It's not a headline you would expect.
A new NAACP poll finds Black voter enthusiasm generally rising with Harris, but it hasn't covered a surprising support for Trump among the younger Black male population. What does this mean for the future of the Black vote? Welcome back to You Can't Make This Shit Up. I can never point this thing right. That is your host, David Washington. I am your host, Kellen Clark. And let's just jump straight into it, David. Why do we think this is?
All right.
What
Here
do we
we
think
go.
making this?
Thank you, Kellen. Well, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, also known as the NAACP, had a press release on September 15th that came out and said, hey, folks are, of course, my people are coming out for Harris, particularly Black women. That's the core of the Democrats' support, and also for Vice President Kamala Harris's support. However, very quietly in the press release, and if you dig a little bit more into the data, their polling data, it showed that 1 in 4 Black men, young Black men, were trending towards Trump. And so some, other media picked up the story, and then some, pundits had their say in it. Even Vice President Harris, during the National Association of Black Journalists, mentioned this. She was asked a question about the Black vote. And yes, come on, we have to be honest. The Black vote is a monolithic voting bloc for Democrats. It has been for since I've been alive. So we're talking about half a century, and even before that. However, in this particular cycle, and we saw it in 2016, but in this particular cycle, I'm hearing and seeing, whether it's through streaming services or in public, talking to actual voters, a trend of Black people, particularly young Black men, leaning towards Trump.
Yeah. And looking at the numbers of the NAACP, it's not extremely high. It's closer to 1 in 4 Black men in total, and close to half of young Black men. It is noted by some of the people that conducted the poll that a lot of the media reporting on this tend to exaggerate it a little bit, like young Black men support Trump. It's like, they also support Harris. It's just pretty split now. Instead of being almost entirely Democrat, it's just now it's pretty split. And it is very interesting because this push hasn't really seemed to have applied to the women much at all.
Right.
And as well as a lot of the older Black men, it hasn't really penetrated them as much either as it has with the younger ones. Which is, again, it's very interesting to try to figure out the root of this. Because I can't say I entirely know. I have ideas.
Right.
For instance, we see a lot more young Black men running for office under the Republican banner, right?
That's correct.
Young to middle-aged Black men running under the Republican banner, and the Republicans actually being willing to run these candidates, which I think perhaps with some young voters, it just dispels the idea to them that the Republican Party doesn't support them. It's like, oh, but they support Black candidates, therefore they are an open option for me to vote for, which before I might not have considered. It could be an effect like that. It could be something as simple as the rhetoric. People hearing the rhetoric of Donald Trump saying, Harris doesn't actually really support the Black community, or she's a fake member of the Black community. whether you
Mhm.
think it's true or not, maybe some people buy into that, and that's what's causing this push. Maybe it's that they feel pampered by the Democrats, or they feel talked down to by the Democrats, and so they just want to get that narrative out of their ear, for pride or for any other reason. It's hard to say for sure. It's a combination of many things, and I
Right.
think over time, as m- racism becomes a less dominant force in our society overall, there will always be people, I think. And it's certainly not dead like some people like to suggest it is. I don't know why people suggest that. It's not really true. Um, as that becomes a less dominating factor in politics, especially related to the Black community, it's still there, but it's not as front and center as it was, say, 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago, right? It's not up there in the same way it was then. um, Maybe with that, and it's more focused on things like immigration or economic issues or foreign policy, maybe we're just seeing more of those beliefs come out, in the absence of this overwhelming issues related to the Black community where it's like you have an option to vote for.
My family and friends are, overwhelmingly Democrats. That's a fact. I'm probably in my small circle of Black family and Black friends. I'm probably the one who is willing to hear both sides of the political spectrum and point out the policy differences and argue for both sides. Let me take the racism part first.
Yeah.
Um, have I been as a Black man? I'm in my 50s. I'm in that generation that is pretty solid with the Democrats. In this poll, it talked about the Black women being 76, Black women over 50 being 76% in favor of Harris, 66% of Black men over 50 being in favor of Harris. That changes drastically to the younger generation, particularly with young Black
Yeah.
men. Racism, have I been the victim of? I don't even want to say that. Let me say this: what the only color that really matters to me, and I gotta make this very clear: racism does exist, and your exposure to it depends on your individual experience. What matters to me is the color of money that is in the transactions, the business transactions that I'm involved in regards to my political business and my canvassing business. If I am able to provide for myself, my family, my loved ones, because I'm actively working, engaged to build my business, it's the bag, it's the money that matters at the end of the day. I can work with conservatives, I can work with liberals because I have a service or a product that I can deliver to them to help them, market their business or win the campaign. And I'm not in the business of liking people. I'm not in the business of, falling in line with a particular demographic. I'm I'm concerned about my kitchen table issues, and that means paying my bills.
Mhm.
If I've been at my age right now, have I been exposed to any type of racism or ignorance? I say ignorance more racism. But then
Definitely.
again, none of these folks pay my bills. None of these folks, come home with me. None of these folks care for me. So those who have presented ignorant towards me, I don't know them and I don't care about them.
Fair.
So now that we addressed the racism part, and what young Black men see in Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is a businessman. He gets after the bag. He gets paid, and they want to be a boss like uh, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They want to be able to provide. They want to be able to have the better things in life. So if they're looking at it the same way, again, personally, the way I look at it, taking care of their kitchen table issues, or just being able to, afford life in general, that's where I understand young black men and black men in general who tend to look at conservatives or look at the Republican Party or look at Donald Trump as a better alternative to the liberals, to the Democrats, to Vice President Harris.
Yeah,
They're tired of the identity politics.
yeah, and it's funny. Well, they're tired of those identity politics
Mm-hmm.
specifically. I think we have a very image focused political environment right now where a lot of it's who you identify with. It doesn't necessarily have to be by color anymore, but some people will identify it by color, but really it's whose attitude do you like? It's how a lot of voters are attacking this. I've seen a lot of voters who mostly attack this from a vibes perspective, from an attitudes
Yeah.
perspective. And if they see their attitude reflected in Donald Trump, then that's what a lot of them will gravitate toward. That I think is a very important crux of what we see, that because the identity politics is less explicitly about the color of your skin now it's closer to your attitude. What's the identity of your attitude? And voters are voting on the identity of their attitude, which is why a lot of young black men are shifting to more conservative stances. I think they see their attitude reflected in the current brand that the Republicans have, more
Damn,
so than the
damn,
Democrats.
damn, Kellen, you bring up a very good point that I was hoping to get to, but you just, again, for me, you just nailed the head on the nail. On that vibe, the attitude. The Harris campaign, its overarching theme is joy.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I would love more joy and hope and love in my life. Who doesn't? However, that doesn't pay the bills.
No,
That
that's
that
true.
does not address my kitchen table issues, as we were talking off screen about Trump's latest economic proposal, capping credit card interest rates at 10% just last Friday. Unfortunately, this announcement got buried in the news because people were talking about
The
these
second
damn
amendment.
cats and dogs. But he proposed no taxes on overtime pay. That's freaking huge. I'm
Yeah.
willing. I was telling my fiance, I'm thinking about going working for a high end restaurant. Maybe 2 nights out of the week, and and since he's proposing, he was the original proposer of no tax on tips. Going back and running up the bill on working for a high end restaurant and earn just tips and a minimal salary and just make a fortune on
Mhm.
tips, going
Yeah.
back to a regular 9 to 5 where I can earn overtime and work overtime out the wazoo. I did that for the state of Illinois, and if that money wasn't taxable, oh my goodness. So it's those economic, whether he would follow through or not, we don't know. We do have a past track record where he did deliver on promises like
Yeah.
you know
Trade
uh,
wars,
tax
Supreme
cuts,
Court,
Supreme Court, lower
deregulation.
regulations. So, I see why people are interested. A new demographic is interested in the Trump Vance ticket
Mhm.
versus the Harris Walls ticket.
Yeah.
Your feelings versus your checkbook.
Yeah. And of course just to like and just add a foiling layer, there's also the feelings of your checkbook.
Ooh.
How a lot of people will just gauge the economy based on their checkbook, which is a part
Mhm.
of it, but not the whole thing. And again, whether or not these solutions actually work, one could say, oh, no tax on tips, just make it harder to tip your employees, bada bing bada boom. you know or no overtime pay. That's it. We're just not doing overtime at all anymore. So then, there are ways that these things can backfire. We're talking about like price controls on credit cards, or like I should say interest rate controls on credit cards done by the government. Another thing that Trump has recently commented on. Again, even if it sounds better on paper than it might be in practice, even if it's a bit of a risky policy when you break it down to brass tacks, who the hell, other than nerds like us, breaks it down to brass tacks, right? It's the feelings of your pocketbook as well. And again, if they feel like they have more solutions from Trump because he's more specific, regardless of the nature of the policy, then they're likely to interpret that as being a more in-depth plan, a more in-depth concept of a plan.
Kellen, if former President Trump is reelected, again, I've gone on record already giving the certain circumstances right now, if things remain static, Vice President Kamala Harris is likely to be reelected. However, saying that, if DJT is reelected and he follows through on this on these proposals, man, I'm going to be working and working and working and just running up, as much as I can, because it's just, and there's arguments you can make for these proposals. The math that I've done supports the no tax on tips and also the no tax on overtime pay. I have very little credit card debt, so 10% cap. Shoot, I might as well just pay it off. I keep it just I don't know, the old wives' tale of if you keep a balance on your credit card, that helps your credit score. I don't know if that's true or not, but man, we're talking about a whole new type of economy. That is your opportunity economy.
Yeah, it sounds so exciting. It really does.
Yeah.
And of course, I will forever criticize the Trump Vance campaign for leaning more into the damn cats and dogs than the actual like underlying things that they could actually lean into. Or saying that, or just going on multiple rants saying that Kamala Harris hates Jews. Again, there are so many better angles to attack their own campaign from. Like they really are their own worst enemy. It's kind of insane. But you're right, David. Like this is kind of what's missing from the Harris campaign for a lot of people, and I think it is important for the Harris campaign and Democrats as a whole to not keep shedding these numbers for them. Of course, for Republicans, they can lean even further into this angle because it does seem to resonate with many important, prominent blocks of voters. I kind of agree with you. I'll definitely agree with you on the tax on tips things. There should never be taxes on tips.
Right. All right.
But regardless of what you think of the rest of the policy, specifics matter.
Yes, it does.
The idea of them having a plan matters more than the plan itself, I would say, in this political landscape. Making it appear like having any plan, even if it's a bad plan, matters more than is more important than having no plan. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's more important to have proposals that are wrong almost than to have no proposals. I think with the voting landscape these days, and I don't think all of these are wrong. I'm just pointing this out like as a whole because this is also something that matters to the Harris campaign.
Yes.
Whatever the Harris campaign should propose alternatives and or concessions on some things where necessary to keep their muster up. Like David said, if things stay as they are right now, it looks like Harris has a slight advantage.
Yeah.
It looks like it would be a very close race, with Trump likely doing better in this race than he did in 2020, from what we've seen so far, specifically in Arizona, which is specifically Arizona and Nevada and Georgia. Although right now Harris is actually looking better in North Carolina than Biden did, very surprisingly. It is important for them to not slow down, though, if they actually want to win. It's very important for the Trump campaign, if they want to win, to emphasize the actual damn elements of their platform
Yeah.
instead of, just the entertainment. I mean, the entertainment made Trump in 2016. It really
Yeah.
did. That was what got him through that primary,
Yeah.
was the fact that he was entertaining. Um, but he's established now,
Yeah.
and he's proposing a lot of new stuff. And it is kind of silly for him to not always lean into it. But just getting back to the point, the back to the actual point of our discussion, we do see a shift in how a lot of people, but especially minority groups, vote. We're seeing a shift
Yeah.
because it is no longer just about supporting rights or not supporting rights. Both sides support rights to some degree now. Both of them just ultimately both sides present alternatives. With neither being objectively better or worse for most minority communities in question. Um, the attitude, identity politics
Hmm.
is taking center stage instead of demographics, identity politics,
And
and
that's a
it is
shame.
important. And it's important for anybody running for office, any campaign, to remember that.
My final word is this: if people, voters, because not all of us are going to vote. However, for voters to just sit with themselves and look at this election from their point of view
Hmm.
first, and then from their family's point of view second, and then the community that they live in, their point of view, and then from the nation. But start with yourself first and what your kitchen table issues are, because I look at both campaigns from the perspective of a young 50-ish black male, divorced, no children in my care, business owner. And those policies affect me now and into the future. And
Hmm.
so I look through the prism. I look at these policies through that type of prism. So I encourage voters to do the same. And I believe, I think, I know that many of us are going to find out that the person that we may have had decided to vote for is probably not the one who will deliver on the policies
Hmm.
that really matter to you as a voter,
Yeah,
as a citizen.
yeah. And just adding on to that, obviously, I attack from a different angle to David. I consider myself younger than David. He considers himself a youngish black man at the age of 50. I consider myself young at the age of 21. But regardless, I obviously I'll have my own kitchen table issues because, and a lot of my stuff is more about, I think what David's really interested in is the policy surrounding his business. I think a lot of the policy I will tend to focus on is the policy about my education and the policy of where I live. That's, I think, really what gets to me because, if I were to support, policy that will seek to develop an area, I'll still be working when that's done. So,
Yeah.
it's a worthwhile issue for me, but maybe not for everybody. And it's also important to know, because we focus a lot on negativity in politics, things that are bad. It's also important to acknowledge, what is there, but also whether or not either of the candidates actually have what you need. If what you want if what you want isn't actually represented, I strongly recommend checking out third parties.
That's
Um,
correct.
and if you find that, one of them really speaks to you, then maybe you'll want to vote for them. If you find that you would rather destroy the lesser of two evils, vote in that way, I guess.
Right.
Do whatever you want. Don't let me tell you. But
Yeah.
there's
You
always a
got
lot to
Jill.
consider, and it's
Yeah.
important to look at the actual platforms of things.
Yeah. There's Jill Stein and Cornell West. So, yes, you're right, Kellen. You're
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, I personally want to do more looking into the third party races. They've been very quiet ever since RFK dropped out. This
Oh,
particular cycle.
check out Jill Stein. She's made a couple of appearances recently. Cornell West did something significant. I can't remember if it was in Virginia or Maryland, but they've been in the news lately.
Yeah, I remember Stein. She's been here forever.
Yes, Green Party.
She's been a bit of a perennial candidate.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's all we have to say. So please like, comment, share, support our community. We want to grow our community. We want to have more authentic conversations. Do you disagree with us entirely? Am I personally an idiot? Please let us know in the comments below. Please bring your facts, not your feelings. If you have a specific claim, just try to point us in the right direction so that way we're all on the same plane of discussion. But yeah, that's all I have to say. This has been You Can't Make This Shit Up. We are Jane Washington, and we are also